Let's get right into it. Number 9. The LaserDisc. Before Netflix was a glow on your bedroom wall, there was the LaserDisc. It was the size of a family-sized pizza and just as greasy if you touched the surface. It offered crystal-clear analog video, but it was so heavy you could use it as a weapon in a medieval siege, and you had to flip the disc halfway through the movie like a vinyl record. It failed because it was expensive, fragile, and physically obnoxious, but it taught us one very dangerous thing, that we deserved high-definition home theater experiences. It failed so that the DVD could survive, and the DVD died so that you could stream 4K footage of a cat falling off a table directly into your brain. We can't live without high bitrate vanity, and we have this giant, silver frisbee to thank for the addiction. Number 8. Google Glass. In 2013, Google decided the one thing missing from your face was a $1,500 camera that made you look like a cyborg who forgot to finish getting dressed. It created a new breed of social pariah known as the glass hole, mostly because nobody likes talking to someone who might be secretly recording them through a tiny prism. It was a spectacular flop that was bullied off the streets by the sheer force of social awkwardness. Fast forward to today, and we're all tripping over ourselves to buy smart glasses and mixed reality headsets that do the exact same thing but with better branding. We didn't actually hate the tech, we just hated being the first person in the room to look that ridiculous. Now that big tech has convinced us that wearing a computer on your nose is spatial computing, we've welcomed the failure back into our living rooms with open arms and empty wallets. Number 7. The QR code. For about a decade, the QR code was the lonely loser of the tech world. It was that weird, pixelated square on the back of a cereal box that required you to download a specific, sketchy app just to be redirected to a website that wasn't optimized for mobile anyway. It was the fetch of technology people kept trying to make it happen, and it kept not happening. It was a failure of UX design that became a punchline. Then, a global pandemic turned touching things into a high-stakes game of biological roulette, and suddenly, the QR code was the king of the restaurant industry. Now, you can't even look at a taco menu without scanning a digital portal first. It failed for 10 years straight, until the universe forced us into a corner where we had to accept it or starve. It's the technological equivalent of that one awkward cousin who finally becomes useful because they're the only one with a truck when you're moving. Number 6. The Segway. Imagine, for a moment, it's 2001. The hype is so deafening you'd think Steve Jobs had just invented fire. Investors are claiming cities will be rebuilt around this machine. Then, the curtain drops, and out rolls a motorized pogo stick that makes you look like a mall security guard from a dystopian future where everyone has given up on knees. It was supposed to replace the car. Instead, it became the preferred chariot for tourists who want to move at walking speed without the dignity of actually walking. We mocked it into oblivion, yet here we are in 2026, dodging a sea of electric scooters and personal mobility devices that are just Segways that went to finishing school and learned how to fold. We hated the geek factor, but it turns out our collective laziness was more powerful than our sense of fashion. Your brain basically decided that looking like a dork was a fair trade for never having to engage your glutes again. Number 5. The QWERTY Keyboard. If you were to design a tool for maximum efficiency, you probably wouldn't arrange the buttons specifically to slow you down so the mechanical arms of a 19th century typewriter don't get tangled. But that's exactly what happened. The QWERTY layout is a deliberate engineering bottleneck designed for a problem that hasn't existed since the steam engine was high-tech. We've had dozens of better, faster, and more ergonomic layouts like Dvorak or Colmac, but we collectively looked at them and said, no thanks, I prefer my carpal tunnel. We are stuck with a failed design logic simply because our muscle memory is a stubborn toddler that refuses to move houses. Your brain would rather spend a lifetime making fat finger typos on a glass screen than spend 2 weeks learning a layout that actually makes sense. It's a global pact of inefficiency we signed in blood and ink ribbons. Number 4. New Coke. You're a high-powered executive in 1985, and you decide to change the chemical composition of the most famous liquid on Earth because a blind taste test told you people like things slightly sweeter. It was the marketing equivalent of trying to update the Bible with more emojis. The public didn't just stop buying it, they treated the change like a personal hate crime. People were hoarding the old stuff in basements like they were prepping for a nuclear winter where the only currency was corn syrup. It failed so spectacularly that Coca-Cola had to retreat within months. But here's the kicker. The failure was so legendary, it cemented the original flavor as a cultural deity. We can't live without the original specifically because the failure taught us the terrifying trauma of almost losing it. It's the Stockholm syndrome of soft drinks. We love the product now mostly because the company once threatened to take it away and replace it with a chemistry project. Number 3. The Nintendo Virtual Boy. In 1995, Nintendo decided that the future of gaming was a red and black headache machine that looked like a pair of binoculars on a tripod. It didn't do virtual reality so much as it did eye strain and neck cramps. It was a commercial catastrophe that was discontinued faster than a New Year's resolution. It failed because it was uncomfortable, monochrome, and made users feel like they were staring into a laser pointer. Yet, here we are in the year 2020, with every major tech giant trying to shove us into a metaverse, using headsets that are basically just high-definition versions of that same red nightmare. We can't live without the dream of escaping reality, even though our first attempt at it felt like being punched in the retinas. It's the ultimate failure we refuse to let go of because, deep down, we'd all rather be in a glitchy digital world than deal with the laundry in this one. Number 2. The Nintendo Power Glove. Long before you were flailing your arms in a VR headset or swinging a Wii remote like a possessed tennis pro, there was the Power Glove. It was marketed as a futuristic controller that allowed you to manipulate games with simple hand gestures, making you look like a cyber soldier from the year 2000. In reality, it was a piece of stiff, gray plastic that barely registered your movements unless you performed a very specific, very awkward ritual with your fingers. It was a failure of engineering that left a generation of kids frustrated and confused, but it planted a seed in our collective subconscious, the idea that buttons are a limitation. We can't live without motion controls, touch screens, and gesture-based tech today because the Power Glove made us fall in love with the idea of reaching into the digital world, even if the actual product was about as responsive as a brick. Number 1. The Clippy Assistant. If you're over a certain age, your fight-or-flight response is triggered by a sentient paperclip asking if you need help writing a letter. Clippy was Microsoft's attempt to make software friendly, but it ended up feeling like a condescending office ghost that popped up every time you hit the backspace key. It was universally loathed, a failure of artificial personality that was eventually buried in an unmarked grave. But look at us now. We are currently obsessed with large language models and AI assistants that do the exact same thing, just with better grammar and less googly eyes. We can't live without AI because Clippy crawled so that ChatGPT could fly. Your brain just needed 20 years to get over the trauma of a stationary supply item judging your resume formatting before it was ready to let an algorithm take over your job. Inventions that were never meant to last, but somehow still rule your life. Number 8. The standard shipping container. You are currently wearing clothes, sitting near furniture, and possibly holding electronics that have, at some point, been transported inside a featureless, rectangular metal box. The standard shipping container is arguably the dullest and most important invention of the modern era. Before the 1950s, transporting goods by sea was pure chaos. Different-sized boxes, barrels, and sacks were loaded individually by hand, making the process painfully slow and incredibly expensive. Malcolm McLean, a trucking magnate, realized the inefficiency and invented a uniform, stackable steel box. He intended it as a hyper-efficient tool to cut costs. And it did. What he didn't intend was for this utterly boring box to completely reshape global geopolitics, destroy local economies that relied on dock labor, and enable the era of cheap, disposable consumer goods. It was a simple solution for logistics that ended up accidentally creating globalization. Your ridiculously cheap sweater from across the world exists because of the standardized dimensions of a stackable metal rectangle. Number 7. The eraser on the pencil. Who among us hasn't savagely attacked a bad piece of algebra with the pink rubber on the end of a pencil? The pencil eraser seems like a natural companion, but it was added as a brilliant marketing gimmick. Before the late 19th century, pencils and erasers were sold separately. Then, one clever inventor named Hyman L. Lipman realized that if he permanently attached a piece of rubber to the end of a pencil with a ferrule, that little metal ring, people would buy it for the convenience. The U.S. Patent Office initially rejected his patent, arguing it was just two existing things put together. But it didn't matter. The convenience sold itself, and the combination became the gold standard. You are perpetually using two distinct items that were only married together for better sales figures, proving that convenience, not genuine innovation, is the true engine of daily life. Number 6. The plastic bag. You probably hate plastic bags. You hate the way they clutter your pantry. You hate how they drift into the oceans, and you hate the existential guilt of using one. But the plastic bag was actually invented in 1959 by Swedish engineer Sten Gustaf Thulin as an eco-friendly alternative to paper bags. Thulin's paper bags required felling trees and were not durable, so he created the plastic bag to be durable, reusable, and less resource-intensive. The entire point was for you to keep and reuse it until it fell apart. What actually happened? Manufacturers discovered they could produce them so cheaply that they became the ultimate symbol of disposable, single-use convenience. The modern environmental scourge that gives you anxiety every time you visit the grocery store was born from a very earnest, albeit extremely misguided, attempt at sustainability. Number 5. The standard electrical outlet. Look at the nearest electrical outlet, stare into those two vertical slots and that awkward little hole below them. If you live in North America, you're gazing at a design that, by all rights, should have been retired decades ago. The standard three-pronged plug design, NEMA 5-15, was a product of the early 20th century, before anyone had a unified vision for a national power grid. The primary reason we still use a system that is bulky, prone to wall wobbling, and shockingly inefficient at transferring power compared to modern alternatives is purely cost and convenience of backward compatibility. Imagine the sheer, terrifying expense of replacing every single electrical outlet and every single device plug in an entire country. That's the inertia we're up against. The two flat blades were originally simple, ungrounded conductors, and the U-shaped ground pin was added later as a necessary safety retrofit to stop you from accidentally turning yourself into a human conductor. It's an antique safety measure bolted onto an antique design. We're still running our 4K streaming setup through a system basically invented to power Thomas Edison's lamps, proving that sometimes the cheapest, oldest solution becomes permanently cemented into our lives, regardless of how much better the new stuff is. Number 4. The shopping cart. You go into a giant store intending to buy 3 things, and you leave with 30 items you never knew you needed. You can blame the shopping cart. In 1937, Sylvan Goldman, the owner of a supermarket chain, noticed that customers stopped buying things when their hands were full. His solution? A folding metal frame with 2 wire baskets. He meant it as a convenience, a simple mobility aid for the customer. What he actually invented was a subtle, psychological tool of consumer excess. The moment you push that cart, your brain thinks, I have space to fill. It fundamentally changed the retail experience from a quick, transactional necessity to a protracted, inventory-clearing event. The cart gives you the permission to buy far more than you can carry, transforming a simple trip for milk into a massive quarterly restock, all because 2 simple baskets on wheels made your arms feel less tired. Number 3. The car horn. Imagine this. You're driving along, minding your own business, and someone cuts you off, narrowly avoiding a fender bender. What is your immediate, primal response? To hit the car horn. That loud, irritating, universally understood blast of noise. The horn was not invented to express road rage or to inform someone that their driving skills resemble those of a confused toddler. No, the horn was a direct regulatory requirement. Early cars, being silent and newfangled contraptions, were dangerous because horses and pedestrians couldn't hear them coming. The horn was mandated by law as a safety signal, a polite, excuse me, dangerous machine approaching, warning. But look at how we use it now. It's a tool of aggression, a 4-wheeled megaphone for your deepest frustrations. It's used to tell the person in front of you that the light has been green for about 0.4 of a second, or to express your general displeasure with humanity. We have taken a civil safety device designed to prevent collisions with horses and turned it into the primary soundtrack of every stressful commute, proving that humans can take even the most benign, mandatory safety feature and transform it into a weapon of sonic terror. Number 2. The walk signal countdown. You stand at an intersection, watching the little white walking man tick down from 15, then 10, then 5, urging you into a quick jog. The pedestrian countdown timer was not invented for convenience. It was invented to reduce the liability of city governments. Before the countdown, pedestrians would often try to cross the street when the light turned yellow, arguing they had enough time. The countdown removes that ambiguity. It gives the city a precise metric to say, "No, you had 6 seconds, and you chose to start crossing when the timer hit 1. That's on you." It's a brilliant piece of municipal engineering that masquerades as helpful technology while actually serving to legally indemnify the Department of Transportation. Number 1. The traffic light color order: red, yellow, green. The colors themselves are universal for human psychology. Red equals danger, green equals go. But the order they appear in a vertical stack, red on top, yellow in the middle, green on the bottom, is purely practical. It was established primarily for the benefit of colorblind drivers. Red, being the most critical color, is always placed on top because colorblind people can still discern the position of the illuminated light, even if they can't distinguish the hue. We've adopted this specific vertical arrangement not out of aesthetic design, but as a century-old, low-tech accessibility solution for a significant portion of the population. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.